If you just got engaged, congratulations. And you may be feeling a lot of pressure to quickly pick a date, book a venue, and make hundreds of decisions at once. But what do you actually do first? In this episode, I am going to walk you through the first three wedding decisions that you need to make before you start booking anything so you can build a wedding that feels like yours instead of one shaped like interest, family expectation, and panic. Welcome to episode 11 of Heart Experiment Podcast. So if you're newly engaged and you don't know where to begin, you're in the right place. If you're new, welcome. This is the first episode of a series where we'll walk you through the wedding planning process together, but in a way that protects your relationship and keeps the wedding connected to what actually matters to you. So, before you choose a date or start booking a venue tour or even start sending your family inspiration pictures, I want you to start with these three decisions. First, what do you want the wedding to feel like? Second, what is your real budget and who get a say? And third, who are you actually inviting? Let's start with the first one. I think one of the easiest way to get overwhelmed in this whole wedding planning process is to start with what is the wedding supposed to look like. You start looking at venues, Pinterest, Instagram reels, and next thing you know, you're making choices based on what looks beautiful online, but you still haven't actually figured out what do you want your wedding to feel like. That questions matter more than you think because it will help you so much as a filter to every other decision that you're going to have to make later on. Early on in our wedding planning process, we figure out that we want our wedding to feel warm, intimate, and dreamy. So that is what we had in mind when we're doing venue tour. And there's this one venue that was kind of up there in my mind. But when we look at the venue, it just feels so expansive, feels so empty. Yes, it was beautiful and the scenery was majestic, but it's just lack the feeling of warmth and intimate that we want for our wedding day. And if we or to fill the space with decoration that would make it feel warm and dreamy, then we both know that we're going to drop some major bucks just on the decoration. So then, even though the venue was my dream venue, we decided to pass on that. So I think this is only one of many examples of how making the decision of how you want your wedding day to feel like would help you later on in making other decisions. On paper, the venues that we went to were wonderful. We had multiple different venues that are all look good, all has different spots for pictures. So how do you decide? At the end of the day, the way that we decided was asking ourselves, what are we hoping to feel when we are actually there? Do we want the day to feel intimate, peaceful, joyful, formal, elegant, playful, relaxed, meaningful? Because I think beautiful is not specific enough to help you make decision. A beautiful wedding can still feel rushed, it can still feel stressful, and it can still feel disconnected from people who are actually getting married. So that's why the first decision I want you to make, it's not your color palette, it's not your wedding theme, it's not even your date. What do we want this wedding to feel like? Here's what I want you to do. Sit down separately with your fiance and each write down 3 words describing how you guys want the wedding day to feel like. Don't compare your answer immediately. Give yourself a few minutes to think individually about it. Maybe your words are peaceful, warm, and intentional. Maybe your partner writes joyful, energetic, celebratory. The words don't need to match perfectly. In fact, it might be helpful if they don't, because then you'll have something real to talk about. Once you have your three words, ask, what does these words mean to me in practice? If I say, I want this wedding to feel relaxed, what would make it feel relaxed? Is it having fewer event that day? Is it not taking picture for 3 hours? Is it having a smaller guest list? Is it making sure that you guys have time to eat, sit down, and actually be present? If I say I want the wedding to feel intimate, does it mean a smaller guest list? Does it mean choosing a space where people actually have to interact with one another? This is the part that turned a vague feeling into a practical wedding decision. After you choose your feeling words, each of you should choose three non negotiables. And when I say non negotiable, it doesn't simply mean I saw this on Pinterest and now I want it. A non negotiable should means something that genuinely matters to your experience of the day. Maybe it's having a certain person there. Maybe it's being able to spend meaningful time with your guests. Maybe it's having a specific cultural tradition included. Maybe it's prioritizing photography, food, music, or private moments together. The purpose is not to create this long list of things that you refuse to compromise on. The purpose is to identify a few things that deserve your attention, energy, and money. And here's why it's important. If you don't intentionally decide how you want to feel, then your family, your friends, the internet, and the whole entire wedding industry are going to decide for you. Once you know what matters most, then you can start having a more honest conversation and decision about the money required to create it. So let's move into the second decision, your real wedding budget and who get a say on how it is spent. A wedding budget can look like a simple math problem. You choose a number, you look at your option, and you try to make everything fit. But in reality, money often brings a much deeper question. Who is contributing? Who feels entitled to have an opinion? What happens when one person wants to spend more money than the others? And what happens when family member offer to help but comes with certain expectation? Imagine you and your partner have decided on a budget that you're both comfortable with. You know what you can contribute and you feel like it reflects your current life. Then a family member offer to contribute a significant amount of money. At first, it may feel like a huge relief. You can choose a better venue, you can invite more people, you can add things that you thought were out of reach. But then the suggestions galore begin. They want more guests invited. They have different ideas about the venue. They want a particular tradition included. And suddenly, the money has changed the conversation. You're no longer only asking, can we afford this? You're also asking, who gets to decide? So when you create your wedding budget, don't just ask, how much money do we have access to? Also ask, what can we comfortably contribute? What are we willing to spend without creating resentment? And what expectation comes with outside financial help? I would encourage you to write down three numbers. The first one is the number that you can contribute yourself. The second one is the number that you think other people may contribute. And then the third one is the maximum amount of number that you're comfortable in spending without putting yourself under unnecessary financial pressure. Those numbers may not be the same, and that's okay. The important thing is understanding what you can spend, what you want to spend, and what you can reasonably afford. Then, if a family member offers to contribute, ask them if the money is a gift, a loan, or connected to a specific wish list. That conversation may be uncomfortable, but it is a much easier conversation to have before you sign anything than after. And just because someone is contributing money, that doesn't mean that they just get to make every decision. At the same time, if someone is contributing a large amount, it may be unrealistic to pretend that the money has no effect on the conversation. This is where honesty matters. You and your partner need to decide together what decision are ours alone, what decision are we willing to discuss with family, and what happened if we receive an advice that we don't want to follow. One possible rule that I have with my fiance then was we will listen to everyone who is affected, but the final decision belongs to us. So that could look like not making decision on the spot and always say that we are going to discuss it later. That doesn't mean you ignore your family. It means you understand the difference between receiving inputs and giving away ownership. If this episode is helping you slow down and think through the planning process, consider subscribing and follow through the rest of the series. We are going to keep moving through the practical decisions, but we're also going to talk about the conversation and emotions underneath them. Because the goal is not just to plan a wedding, the goal is to plan a wedding without losing yourself in the process. One of the first places where your budget, your values, and your decision making process become very real is the guest list. So let's move into the third decision. Who are you actually inviting? A guest list can feel like a list of names, but really is a collection of relationships. And because of that, it can get emotionally complicated very quickly. You may have people you genuinely want there, people your parents expect you to invite, people you feel guilty leaving out, and people you haven't spoken to in years, but suddenly feel responsible for including. For us, we start as spreadsheets and we start typing names. And at first, it was exciting. You add your closest friends, your sibling, your grandparents, your uncle, your aunt, the people who have been part of your life. And you start adding people because someone says, of course, they're invited. Then you add people because you don't want to hurt their feelings. You start adding people because you're worried someone will think that the wedding's too small. Before you know it, the wedding grown by dozens of people, and you haven't stopped to ask whether those relationships are active in your life now. That is why the guest list should not be created entirely on guilt or momentum. The way I did it was before you start listing every people you've ever known, create three categories. I'm actually opening the spreadsheet where I have my guest list. Essentially, you want to create a category of people who must be there, people we would genuinely love to be there, and people we feel obligated to invite. This is definitely not a ranking of people's value. It is just a simple way to understand the size and shapes of one event. What we end up creating was a list of they better come. So those are the people like obviously my siblings, my parents, his siblings, close friends, our wedding party. And then our second category is I hope they come. So these are the people who are really close to us and we're really hoping and genuinely would love for them to come, but we're just not sure because of distance, because of time, because of the current life stage that they are in. So we can kind of just hope that they come. And then there's also a kind of want them there. So this might be someone we recently have a relationship with. It might be a co-workers. It might be a relative that recently got closer. So that could also be there. Another category that we have is would be cool. One of these people are family who are really from far away, college friends who are in between acquaintances and close friends. And the last one was polite. These are my kindergarten teacher, my math tutor, my mom's co-workers. So Yeah, we created more than three categories, but I think just to start with, it would be helpful for you and your spouse to create three categories of people who must be there, people who you would genuinely would love to be there, and people who you mostly feel obligated to invite. I would have each of you create your own list before combining them, then compare your list and talk about the difference because you and your partner might have a different definition of each category. That's what we found out as well. We have a difference in definition of kind of want them there and would be cool, which is fine, but it's just a good practice for you to know where each other at. You can talk about who did one person include that the other person didn't think of. Are there relationships that feel equally important to the both of you? Are there people included because of genuine closeness, or is it because of an expectation? You also need to decide your guest rules early. For example, will everyone get a plus one or only guests in established relationship? Will children be invited? Will co-workers be included? Are you inviting distant relatives you rarely speak to? What is your role for people you haven't spoken to in years? The goal is not to create a perfect rule where nobody can question. The goal is to create a consistent rule so that you're not making every decision from scratch. So when family members ask you to invite more people, you can acknowledge the relationship without giving away your boundary. You can say, we understand that this relationship matters to you. We're trying to create a guest list that fits our budget and the kind of wedding we're envisioning. So we may not be able to invite everyone. You don't have to prove the person is unimportant. You don't have to create a long explanation, and you don't have to apologize for having a limit. If you're already feeling guilty about your guest list, pause here. Not inviting someone to your wedding is not the same as saying that person has no value in your life. It means you're making decision about one day, one space, one budget, and one season of your life. So let's put it all together. Before you choose a date, book a venue, or start making a deposit, I want you and your partner to talk through three major decisions. First, what do we want our wedding day to feel like? Choose three feeling words and turn those feelings into practical priorities. Second, what is our real budget and who gets a say? Be honest about what you can afford, what family contribution mean, and how you will handle disagreements. Third, who are we actually inviting? Create your guest list categories and your roles, and also prepare yourself to have that family conversation that often come with them. You do not need to have all of the answer today, but starting this conversation can help you avoid making decision from panic, pressure, or comparison. Your wedding does not have to look like everyone else's wedding to be meaningful, and it does not have to satisfy every single expectation in order to have a beautiful beginning. Ask yourself, if we remove the pressure to impress anyone, what would still matter to us? That question may not solve every planning decisions, but it definitely can help you come back to yourself when the process starts to feel overwhelming. Let me know in the comments the three words that you would use to describe how you want your wedding day to feel like. And if you're newly engaged, save this episode or send to someone who just got engaged and come back to it before you book anything. Let me know what you want to hear for the next episode. I am thinking about talking more specifically on how to create a wedding budget without starting a fight or allowing money to create resentment between you and your partner. If you're still here, thank you for checking in. I'll talk to you again next week.